Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. I am Josh. That is Adam, my guest tonight. This is Conversations on the Fringe. This is where we talk about those things that are outside of the norm of the mind that people don't usually have the conversations about. You know, I think those types of conversations are needed these days. My guest, Adam Kokesh, he is a American libertarian political activist, radio host, author. He's a 2020 presidential candidate for the Libertarian Party. I believe McAfee was your running mate. He's also a United States Marine Corps veteran. Adam, what's up, man? How you doing?
Well, thanks for mentioning McAfee as my running mate. God rest his soul.
Yeah.
As the last surviving member of that presidential ticket, it does kind of put me in an unusual spot when you put it that way. And everybody knows that, you know, just like Epstein, McAfee didn't kill himself. That's an obscene story they've been trying to pass off. My friend John had a wonderful lust for life that no amount of bullying in a Spanish jail system could have beaten out of him. So I guess if you're going to start on that, let's dedicate our Friday evening to the dear departed John McAfee, shall we?
Let's do it.
And have a token in his honor.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. John, you know, it's interesting because many people are waking up. I talk a lot about how people went to sleep in 2020 and woke up in 1984. And a lot of those people that are waking up in 1984 are realizing that the world is built around information warfare, psychological warfare. And that everything that's been happening on social media, everything that's happening on the news, it doesn't matter where you get it from in your channel. It's all a bias. It's all a manipulation. It's all meant to control the narrative of someone else, of something else that is progressing some type of agenda in this world to bring about world domination, control, a totalitarian police state, whatever you want to call it. Now, I remember you from the early 2000s. I was an early Ron Paul supporting myself. I was active duty military up until 2010, 2008. I was with the Oath Keepers in Stewart. We helped form the one rally for Ron Paul in Washington, D.C. I think you actually spoke there. You know, so I remember you from the early days of all this and all this happening. And I saw you on Twitter one day and I'm like, where the hell has he been? Like, what happened to Adam? Then I find out you just been massively shadow banned, censored, and you know you have a knack for being incredibly outspoken, but as well as not giving a shit what government says, and that's incredibly respectable these days and age because the world needs that.
Well, Josh, I have some bad news for you. I'm really like in terms of censorship and shadow banning. I am uniquely by name blacklisted. And I take it as a great honor that, you know, not only did I make it on the Joe Rogan podcast, but I'm one of the people who got censored first when he got sold out with Spotify. Yeah, while you were going through all that, I was thinking, you know, if I could give people one thing to understand, you know, it would be how to really, not just how to think for themselves. You know, I think what separates messages like yours and mine from what you described there as the mainstream agenda-driven media. And I don't want to pretend that like I don't have an agenda. Like I have a vision. I have a world that I want to see, that I want to achieve. You see, where have I been aside from shadow banned and censored? I've been building my paradise here in Gardenia on my 10 acres in the mountains of Arizona. And I'm sitting right now in a half-finished cabin in front of a literally roaring fire in my wonderful wood-burning stove here. I spent the whole day on mushrooms, on like psilocybin mushrooms, chopping up trees, like trimming trees, chopping up firewood here. And I freaking love it, man. It's my own paradise. And it's incredible, but and that's part. But the world I want to see is like I truly have in, you know, my vision for the future, embraced the libertarian I don't know answer.
Yeah.
Right. You know, like because libertarians, our message is, hey, Can't we all just get along? I know that's lots of ways we try to boil it down, but yes, I believe in self-ownership and the non-aggression principle, and every relationship should be free of force, fraud, and coercion, and therefore they would be voluntary. And philosophically, that makes me a voluntarist because that results in a state of greater freedom. I'm a libertarian in that bigger, inclusive sense of the word, and all that's very important to me. And I have that agenda, but what's it going to look like? I don't know. I don't pretend to know. I'm not a central planner. You know, I'm creating my paradise here, but what I do see that breaks my heart is that so many people are living fucked up lives based on bullying and control and the expectations of others. And I, like, you know, what makes me, you know, the only thing that breaks through my shell of perfect happiness here is seeing other human beings suffer. And even from that, you know, raw anarcho-capitalist, materialist, objective analysis, like, yeah, you can't say freedom is something for me. It's something we want everybody to have, because I want to live in a world of free people. Like, that's, and I can't pretend to know what that's going to look like. But to what you were saying about, you know, the mainstream media agenda-driven message versus, you know, what you get from independent media like us, I think, you know, why am I censored as opposed to other libertarians? Because the mainstream media, and you think about the duopoly, they love the Libertarian Party. They love it because it's perfect controlled opposition. Because they can tell the mainstream voters, no, look, we have a fair democracy where people vote and it's free and fair elections, and and see, we have the Libertarian Party, and they represent some crazy extreme brand of freedom, and that's why they only get a couple percent every time, because no one really likes that. You know, and it's just like, no, it's just absolute nonsense. But what really sets us apart, I think, and what I wish people had this ability for themselves. Like, there's one thing I could give people is, you know, tell the difference between people who are open about their agenda and why they're doing what they're doing, like Josh and myself, and versus, you know, the corporate pro-government authoritarian agenda of the mainstream media. And I think the ultimate thing that sets me apart, and people who have that same, you know, honest perspective, is that we're not just advocating a political message, a philosophical message, even an ethical message. We're advocating living differently based on core human principles of how to live your best life possible, how to meet your fellow human beings with love and respect and kindness and cooperation versus conflict. You know, and that's really at the core of libertarianism, and that's what's fundamentally a threat. You can talk about politics and ethics and all that other shit in the abstract all day long and never get censored, and they don't care. But the moment you start living it and tell people, no, break out of the system, get off the wheel, break the fucking wheel, design your own life from the ground up without the expectations of others holding you back, claim your birthright as a human being living on this earth, let alone a privileged American. Holy shit, that's the threat. You know, and
you're spot on.
Let's try to make it in the spirit of John McAfee. Let's try to stay on that theme tonight, shall we?
Yeah, no, and you're absolutely right there, because whether we believe in God or not, it is believe that it's derived that God gave us these inherent and unalienable rights, that these rights are derived from our freedom of decision, our freedom of choice, and that they should be free of conflict. And this is what the original Constitution was all about. This is what the founders' principles were about. Some of them were Christian, some of them weren't, some of them were atheists, but they all came to that same agreement that we all have these fundamental rights and these fundamental, this freedom derived from the universe or creation, whatever the hell you want to call it, but that derives these rights. Yeah, inherently. Yeah. And that, I think it was Jocko Willink that said, freedom is discipline. And I love this perspective that you have to discipline your mind in order to really be a free human being. That if you allow your environment to control you, if you allow external things to control you, if you're continuously reacting to the world, you're not in control of your decisions and your choices in your life. So therefore, you are a slave by definition.
Yeah, I don't object to the language there at all, but I might put it differently and say, instead of disciplining the mind, reclaiming sovereignty of the mind. And that's to be fair to that language, that's a discipline in and of itself. When so many of us and so many of our animal temptations and animalistic responses to stimuli lead us to give that up, either to the environment. I mean, I would say you're not free. Like, hey, if the weather sucks and you respond to that, like, yeah, that's not a threat to your freedom. That's you meeting the natural elements, right? But in terms of your relationships with other people, yeah, if you don't discipline your mind, if you don't retain that mental sovereignty, the way that humans interact, sadly, I think, although I'd say we are evolving out of this, we are constantly trying to manipulate and control each other through words, through language, through emotion. And that's, again, one of the things that sets, I think, trustworthy messengers apart, is that we always say, think for yourself. Figure it out for yourself. Don't take my word for it. You want to check my sources, but here's my testimony, and here's speaking from my perspective, and I don't pretend to speak for humanity. I don't pretend to speak for the greater good. I speak for myself.
And that's novel this day and age, because you have a lot of this mockingbird media. You have a lot of people just repeating what other people said. We're streaming on YouTube, so there's certain words we can't say, but especially with the last narrative of the pandemic that was going on out there.
Wait, you should have told me this in advance.
Oh, you're good. Don't worry.
I can say shit, fuck, cock, motherfucker, all of that, but I can't say the virus which shall not be named. Are we keeping that out of the conversation tonight?
You can say it all you want. We've had some episodes banned already. I'm on my third or fourth Twitter account on YouTube, as well as I just got my Twitch account indefinitely suspended yesterday, and we stream on our own platform and 10 other platforms anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But
okay, well then let's make the censor's job easy if they want to jump on this. COVID, the threat of COVID is a myth. The whole thing is a special threat, is a hoax. To whatever extent there is a funky off-season flu out there, it is never justifiable to use coercion against peaceful individuals because of any kind of biothreat whatsoever. Principles are principles, all the more important in the face of such a biohazard. If what they were saying was real, the idea that they're forcing vaccines on people is fucking criminal, because they're protecting the vaccine companies from liability. And when it comes to Ukraine, I think it's a wag the dog kind of distraction, the Ukraine-Russia conflict. There's a whole lot of misinformation that we see being deconstructed in real time, but there's a backstory, and whoever is behind the whole thing, clearly this is the super class in competition in a certain way where they all benefit. Because if we weren't all looking at Ukraine right now, everybody would be looking around the world going, holy shit, our government really fucked up this COVID policy thing, didn't they?
Yeah.
Unnecessarily. And I think it's serving as a big distraction. Every government, and I hate to say that we might be on the verge of World War III. I think that's what they're trying to do. But the reason we might be so dangerously getting sucked into it is because every government who took advantage of the opportunity that was COVID to increase their power and make the rich richer at the expense of everybody else, which is fundamentally the purpose of government in the first place, is going, gee, we really need a good distraction.
Yeah. All right. He's in the mountains. Give him a second. He'll be right back there. He just froze, but I'm pretty sure he'll step in about 5 seconds here. And he's right there, is that governments need that good distraction to bring about their tyrannical control and so forth, right? So in thinking about this, and let's see if he's trying to reconnect. It's funny because this happens to me when I'm on a truth rant, right? When I'm sitting there talking about truth, the exact thing happens to me. There he is.
Oh, hey.
I was just saying the same shit happens to me when I'm one of those good strides, and all of a sudden.
Are we good though?
Yeah, we're back. Yeah, we're good.
Refresh on Zoom. All right. So with this dark cloud hanging over everything in COVID, what we saw, a few major dynamics I'm going to point out. Rampant censorship. Like, I don't know if, like, I just gave up on YouTube entirely after being banned and blocked and shadow banned a dozen different ways. And I'm like, do I have 1 strike or 2 strikes? I'm not gonna play this fucking game. But the ramping up of censorship in the digital age because of COVID was unprecedented. And the level of control that gave people to control the narrative, who controlled what was left of the mainstream media, went way up. Next thing, the lockdowns, the shutdowns, and just the forced control of the employment economy, leading to massive concentration of real estate property. And we saw this in the early phases in 2020, but even in spring 2020, it was very clear that assholes like those who control BlackRock and Vanguard were going to be like, and we're consolidating retail holdings, because every retail operation in America that was on a thin margin, that couldn't pay their rent at a strip mall or couldn't pay their lease or whatever it was, all of a sudden, and all of them were forced shut down. Boom, all that property went up for sale. Shit got conglomerized at a much more accelerated rate than ever before in American history. And then as a result, the last big one, act of desperation, is an obscene concentration of wealth. Mm-hmm. And it's I want to say wealth and power, but it's not that. And this is, again, where it comes down to, well, then where the fuck do you go from all this? You know, it's great to be able to rant against the evils of the world and, I see the big picture, but how do you take that away from them? How do you live better? Well, one, the ultimate way that they are able to control us with money is still a fucking mind game. It's what gives the US dollar value. I mean, I know you know this, Josh. Mm-hmm. I know your audience knows this fundamentally, but I'm going to remind you so that my rant is complete here. The dollar itself has no inherent value. It is a fiat currency. It is backed essentially, and I always say it's not backed by anything, because it is backed by the full faith and credit of the United States federal government, which means their ability to do violence if you do not give it to them to pay your taxes. That's what it comes down to. It is the forced coin of the realm, because if you don't have dollars to pay your taxes, you will lose your shit. Mm-hmm. Eventually people with guns come take your stuff. So buy Bitcoin, get crypto, stop holding US dollars, buy gold and silver, do barter. Whatever you do, don't hold dollars and don't pay taxes. And I know this sounds like, oh, well, that's really simple, Adam. Well, and Josh, maybe you want to put me on the spot and pull this apart. But one of the things that's so important to me, like, by the way, I started, I've been vegan for 4 years. Yeah. I came out as vegan recently on Twitter because it was boring in my own little echo chamber talking about libertarianism, and I wanted to piss everybody off. So I started talking about being vegan. I'm actually 1 meal a day vegan. I'm in the best looking shape of my life. Healthiest I've ever.
Nice.
Yeah. And strictly vegan for 4 months. And like 99+% vegan for 4 years. But I don't give a fuck if you kill animals and eat them, as long as you stop fucking paying taxes. Because the reason I'm vegan for health reasons too, obviously, but for moral reasons is I want the non-aggression principle extended to animals, to everything that can exercise self-ownership as much as possible. But yeah, there's a priority here. We got to stop fucking with people before we make animals the priority. Stop paying your fucking taxes, because it's contributing to the evil in the world that is hurting people. So I don't really care so much if you're a carnivore or a vegan, as much as whether or not you're a good tax-paying citizen. Stop fucking paying your taxes. And that doesn't have to be doing anything illegal. What I mean primarily by that, or at least what I advocate, is rearranging your lifestyle. And for me, it's, I bought my land, I live off grid, I have a VA retirement check that I'm happy to live off. I have passive income from my book and from my media production. I have ways that we're working on monetizing the land here now. With my amazing girlfriend, G.I. Mary Jane. But, you know, when you can escape all of those bullshit constraints, then it doesn't seem hard. It becomes easier. You go, wait, how could I give up my job and my career where 30% of my income is taken out of my paycheck, and another 20% disappears in fines, fees, and hidden taxes. Otherwise, how could I stop working for government half the year? That would be so hard. Really? No.
It's not hard. It's comfortable. And people have to get uncomfortable these days.
It's not comfortable. You've been fooled into thinking that.
Mm.
I don't even want to see that ground. No. I mean, I look at even like the rest of my family who are still trapped in that life. They're not comfortable. I mean, we have like even that song, like what was it, the Kid Rock song that came out recently, "We the People."
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not endorsing it, but there's some really powerful lyrics in there. And one of them is like, we got a whole generation that's mentally ill.
Yeah.
And I believe in the general course of human progress. My faith is not shaken by the weaknesses of the millennial generation, of which I'm on the older edge. And I don't think we're getting crazier over time, but because we diagnose more, because we have more leisure time, we're more aware, we're breaking cycles of violence as part of human evolution. But we are experiencing in mental health in first world countries a distinct step backwards right now.
Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more, man. I see a lot of this as manufactured. I see a lot of this as a parasite that it's taken its toll on the people globally. It's meant to kill culture. It's meant to destabilize society. It's meant to, create that environment where communication isn't welcome, that conflict becomes the norm. People walked around with face masks for a long time, 6 feet away from each other. One thing that a lot of people didn't know is the Heart Math Institute did this informational research that your heart actually projects an electromagnetic field, and it goes about 6 feet out radius from your heart, and that when people enter that 6 foot radius, there's a bearing of trust that naturally comes about. This is intuitive, if you want to call it, or whatever it is. But why do you think that they said we have to stay 6 feet apart? Why were we covering our face? Because you know what? That smile can change somebody's day.
And this is I know this is gonna sound corny from going to all that other shit to this, but at your point, it's just we are communal creatures. As much as libertarianism is an individualist philosophy, it's just as much a philosophy about relationships and the way that a libertarian defines the individual is fucking irrelevant if there aren't any other individuals around. So it's all about relationships. And that's why, for me, the term voluntarism is really the best description of the philosophical core of freedom for me. And I believe in God. And I don't believe in God as a personified way in the Abrahamic tradition or Christian or anything like that, or any kind of personified deity. To me, I'm a pantheist. God is that pervasive vibration through the universe of existence that goes to the edge of it and back, whatever that is, that makes us all one. It is that vibration of love, that attraction force. And the opposite of love in human terms, it's not hate. We know this. It's fear, right? And when I say COVID is like this phenomenon of a dark cloud hanging over everything, it's fear. It's anxiety, which is a product of fear, right? And that they've got us with separate, with like you said, the masks and the distancing. And I didn't know that there was that significance at 6 feet, but I know there's a significance, especially for kids who don't get to see facial expressions properly. And I know it really affects me because I have an awesome fucking beard, and if I can't show that off, I just don't feel like a man. But for all of this distance, this separation of people. Well, who's in charge of you now? You're less determined in your behavior your behavior is less determined by your own thought and who people around you and your family and your community, and more dictated by what you get from authorities and what you get from the mainstream media. And so it really comes down to love, and what is it that makes us susceptible to fear versus love? Obviously, we can pinpoint it, we can see it much more clearly then, but also in between this ideal of love, the universal God vibration of Adam's God of pantheism, and all right, and here's government and current problems. There's a certain amount of self-awareness, you know, and before we even get to like the nitty gritty of politics, I think, you know, getting to lifestyle, if everybody lived like me, I hate to say you should live like me, but no, by the same core humane principles of doing our best to not contribute to the evil in the world through our lifestyles, at least this part of the problem will be solved. In terms of this part, how do we get to this? Well, the next level is self-love and self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in between tapping into that God vibration entity is our own projection and manifestation of that. And so many humans on Earth today are completely cut off from that. And I hope my language of my dogma doesn't restrain people from seeing the point that I'm making and the relevant dynamics to fit into whatever dogma, whatever religious perspective appeals to you in terms of your relationship to this, to the unknown, to the supernatural, to God. But so I'm presenting this as like a 4-leveled idea,
Mm-hmm.
4-tiered idea, where there are these sort of, you know, in between God and politics, there's the tier of lifestyle, and higher there's the tier of self-love and self-awareness. And this is why, like, I'm really just more concerned about growing mushrooms and giving them away.
I fucking love it.
So that's a big part of my activism.
So I don't know if you know, my first book is actually coming out here. I've been working on it for about 2 years now, but it's called Transcending the State: What I Learned from Over 150 LSD Trips Before the Age of 18. Yeah. Oh yeah. And I mean, mushrooms, LSD, I've done it all. We're very spiritually inclined here in this audience. We have a very, very non-generic understanding of spirituality, of energy, of understanding what the universe is all about. I actually, I spent 25 years studying and practicing occult and esoteric practices, mysteries, and so forth. And deep dive into that stuff all the time and how relevant it is today. And, you know, Socrates was credited with the quote of ipsum te gnosis, or which means know thyself. And it's interesting because it becomes the fundamental aspect of introspection, of self-reflection, of knowing thyself. And I always put it like this, is that I can't know Adam. I can't get in your head. I can't know your thoughts. I can't see what you're thinking. But I can experience you through your reflection and refraction off of how well I know myself. Right? Is that something inside myself vibrates when I interact with another human being, and that's how this continuity, this relationship, this communication occurs. And the same thing goes for God. Is I can only know God as well as I know myself. I can only know the universe, existence, the ambient energy around me, as well as I know myself. And if I don't have a relationship with myself, I'm cut off from it.
And see, this is the thing that in talking about God the way that I do and have started to recently, I actually saw God when I was in jail for the first time, or spoke to God in this vision for the first time when I was in jail in December, is that I want people to have the sense of wonder that and peace that comes from psychedelics, the sense of everything is right in the universe. But regardless of sobriety state, to live and carry with you an awareness that the gift of human consciousness is the universe becoming aware of itself. Holy fuck! You should be like, this is what makes this how to live.
Yeah.
How to live is what to look like. Holy fuck on your face all the time. That's, if you're not living like that with a couple punctuations to respond to shitty situations here and there, where you react and then go back to holy fuck, now I have an opportunity to respond to a shitty situation. Other than that, you should be walking around living life with a holy fuck. This is the gift of human consciousness.
Yeah.
You should be walking around with that look on your face all the goddamn time.
Because it is amazing in so many ways. I remember I mean, multiple different LSD trips that I've had, or mushroom trips, but I remember just being sober. So I got into meditation. I got into a lot of deep spiritual practices where I could get to the state where I call it transcending the state, is where you're out of your body, you're out of your mind, you're in a different place, and you're one with the universe in essence, right? And there's this feeling, and some explain it as love. I call it more of a high level gratitude. So it's this music, it's this sound, it's this feeling around you. and it encompasses you, and it welcomes you, and it's there's no bad thoughts that come about from it. There's no.
If I may, I think
Yeah.
to describe the same phenomena, I would call it acceptance.
Yeah.
And peace. To me, it's a sensation. It's something that I can know through meditation, but it's a sensation, an overwhelming sensation that everything is right in the universe. Yeah. Every atom is exactly in its place, and you have nothing to worry about, nothing to be afraid of.
And it happens when you just stop and exist. Just exist. Isn't that a novel thought? Has anybody ever just thought about that? Just forgetting everything for a moment and just existing. I mean,
this is very old shit, man.
Yeah.
We're just repackaging it for a new generation from wherever we found it. But what is exciting today, as opposed to in the past when, this was a luxury reserved to rock stars who could afford years in India with gurus and people who committed to that ascetic lifestyle, or had the means to pursue spiritual enlightenment this way, because it is a certain self-mastery. But I think it's really what was really holding people back was survival. And the fact that even in the shittiest of times now, nobody in America really starves. Congratulations, team people. We've come a long way.
Yeah.
And that's true about a good chunk of the world. I don't want to say most, because there's a lot of places where people starve, but for those of us who are fortunate enough to live in a place and to have the means to take care of ourselves without a job to pursue this, this is something that is really now available to more human beings than ever before, by far escalated. And access to psychedelics, access to nutrition and exercise knowledge, is basic health knowledge, taking care of yourself knowledge, that then blossoms into other forms of self-care and psychedelics and smart drug use. Holy shit. And God bless Ross Ulbricht and the Silk Road for everything that he gave humanity, and how many people whose lives were improved because of that. But for what that made possible, what's possible today, humanity's just on the verge of, a vertical acceleration. I describe it as the asymptote.
The asymptote, huh? I like that. A lot of people call it, if you go to different various spiritual communities, New Age community, they call it the big flash, the ascension, moving into the fifth dimension, or whatever it might be. The key here is we all know something is happening. We all feel this uprising of energy. Through my understanding of the esoteric and the occult, I've studied this stuff for a very long time. I try to marry the occult with modern day science. I went back to school, CU Boulder, studied physics just to do this. And I developed something known as optimization theory. And exactly what you just talked about is that we operate in these cycles. And these cycles are states of energy where that energy is continuously bettering itself and moving to various points of optimization. When it gets to that new point of optimization, it destabilizes when it's ready to go to the next point of optimization. And that's what happens is if you ever noticed in your life, you'll go through these stages, but you don't go back to that same bottom. You always progress just a little bit, and then you hit another bottom, a new bottom, but that new bottom is just a little bit more than the last one. And then you start going up again, and then you come back down, but you hit that new bottom, it's higher than the last one. And so what's happening is we're continuously optimizing our state in this progress flow. And it's the same progress flow that the planet does, that the sun cycles do, that the solar system does, that the universe does, and shows us within its laws. And this was documented by the ancient mystery schools, by these alchemists and these old priests and shamans. They told us these stories. These are what the majority of these metaphorical and allegorical stories are all about, is that life is a cycle and a process, and there is a rhyme and a reason to it, that there is this flow of how it all evolves. And if you learn the flow and you understand the rules and the principles that guide it, fuck, you're awake.
Well, I want to make 2 points bouncing off that. One about why I'm confident in humanity evolving towards a libertarian or voluntary society. First in that, but I sort of say also to the nature of life itself.
Yeah.
So, in this sort of ascension To me, the asymptote, and yes, you're right, all those other words, great to hear other people like going, oh, hold on, guys. Yeah, hold on. This generation's experience of humanity is going to be fundamentally fucking different than everything that has gone before by far, because the nature of life is exponential. Now, first, to the voluntary thing, and well, I love citing the work of Professor Steven Pinker, Harvard professor who wrote a great book called Better Angels of Our Nature, did a TED Talk, The Surprising Decline in Violence. And I can disagree with some of his interpretations, but I think what he has proven irrefutably, academically, is that human violence is on the decline. Not only are we living in the most peaceful times in human history where you are less likely to die or experience violence at the hands of another human being than ever before, but it follows a kind of radioactive decay curve over the course of human history. Now, my friend Walter Block, the professor, would make the objection that, well, most of our lives are now ruled by the threat of force, and you have to factor that in as well. But to me, there's something, while that's true, to your 2 steps forward, 1 step back, following on the human social evolution curves, when I see that, it might be just 1 step backwards, a big one that's a product of industrialization, modern bureaucratic governments, the institution of fiat currency, going back about 100 years, right? So 2 steps forward, 1 step backwards. But human evolution, with the caveats of, nuclear war, asteroid, blah, 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 a real virus, the human experience is fundamentally exponential. Sidebar on this, by the way, if this is human progress and our capacity for productivity, that's what's been skimmed off the top, so that progress seems linear to most human beings. What's being skimmed off the top by the elites, the super class, the predator class, whatever, governments, is what's really being stolen from us. And maybe just over the last 50 to 100 years, that exponential progress that humanity should have experienced. I mean, big one, look at energy. The fact that we're still burning fossil fuels and internal combustion engines to spin rubber tires down paved roads, like it's almost archaic at this point, given what we already know is possible and how long it's been available. That kind of holding humanity back for individual profit, it's fucking sick, and we're about to break out of that. So that's how I would sort of concede Walter Block's point that maybe over the last 100 years, but that doesn't change the decline in violence.
Right.
Now, to the bigger point of synchronicity, I guess, is that I see this as really fundamental to the nature of life itself. Multi-celled organisms beat out single-celled organisms, all the way up to human societies that cooperate with each other are going to outcompete human societies that are always embroiled in conflict. And then there's something about the nature of intelligence and biologically driven intelligence as a phenomenon that could be happening anywhere in the universe. I mean, quick sidebar, my little theory is that we, as intelligent life forms, we're the gray goo of the universe. You know the gray goo theory?
No, what's that?
Nanobots that are essentially like viruses, can assimilate any material on Earth. You drop one. It's kind of like, Kurt Vonnegut's Ice 9.
Okay.
You put one molecule of Ice 9 in a body of water, it all turns to ice. It's like you put one little, once this nanobot exists and is unleashed or turned on, eventually the whole world, whatever planet,
will be terraformed.
Great goo of that. It turns into that nanobot. But
I like that.
That I think is better as a metaphor for understanding intelligent life. We are the gray goo of the universe. Eventually, we will assimilate the entire matter of the universe back into a black hole and start the cycle all over again. And we, as those of us alive in 2022, by the way, I feel like that Rob Lowe character on Parks and Recreation, scientists say the first man to live to be 150 has already been born. I'm 40 years old, motherfuckers. I take my vitamins and brush my teeth every day. I'm going to live to be 160. I'm experiencing a quarter life crisis. I just turned 40.
Me too. I turned 40 in December.
Congratulations.
You as well.
So, good timeline of awareness here. But I think we might be the last generation that knows militarism and war we might be the one that hits longevity escape velocity, as Dr. Aubrey de Grey explains it. You know, that once life expectancy is going up by 1 year per year, nobody dies of old age anymore. Yeah, we're on the verge of that, or, you know, uploading our consciousness into machines. I want to stay alive to see that. You know, I mean, in a way, like, staying alive is pretty cool. It's another good reason to be vegan.
Yeah.
You know, I'm building my escape pod here on Earth, my 10-acre paradise, the Garden of Freedom. So anyway, that synchronicity thing is, you know, like you said, it's fundamental to the nature of the universe, to the material, to the spiral of energy. I think you called it at one point, right? And I think, well, what is our essence as human beings? You know, you're just a spiral of energy that attracts matter and then dissipates. You know, like how else would you describe the phenomenon?
Well, I don't know if I would say it dissipates. We see that form.
You die.
What's that?
You die. When you die, your form dissipates. I mean, the material of your body.
Right, the material of your body.
I think your spiral of energy does too. I think death is nothingness. I think the most glorious thing we can do is the best way to live is live ready to die at any moment. You know, to live in crescendo.
So I would disagree with you.
I'll be ready to dive back into the great infinite beyond of dark nothingness of death.
You know, I got a few comments on that. 1 second, okay. So, firstly, I've had experiences in my life that are unexplainable in the sense of the past life. There's one in particular. There's a gentleman I know. I walked into you're good. I walked into a room. And I was going to get Reiki certified, right? Master Reiki certified. I walk into this room, and it's like walking into a spider web of energy. And you walk into this spider web of energy, and he looks up, and I look up, and he goes, "Did you feel that?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And we start talking and communicating. Anyways, his brother just died. He sold his businesses. He's kind of having a spiritual awakening. He goes to India and Thailand for like 6 months, comes back, and goes, I got to talk to you. And we kind of had been in communication this whole time. The night before I went to go meet him, I went into a meditation. And I said, how do I know this guy? Where am I connected with him in life? And this vision came up. And the vision was me and him in full Roman body armor. And we are holding hands, and we are on a knee, and we are saying a prayer in Latin. And we told each other, if we shall die in this life, shall we see each other in the next. The next day, I drove out to see this guy. And I'm walking up to the table, and he's got this little box in front of him. And he's telling me about his journeys. He's showing me pictures. And he tells me I got to the Sleeping Buddha temple in Thailand. And the head Rinpoche there was friends with my brother. And he sees me and he calls me back. And he takes me in the back room. And he opens up this box. And he shows me 2 bracelets that were blessed by this monk, this Buddhist monk. And he goes, he gave these to me and said, "You've just met someone that you are connected with through lives. And that you should have one and he should have one." I'm like, "Dude, this is so cool. Who is it?" He goes, "Well, it's you." And I'm like, whoa, like, holy shit, this is weird, right? And I asked him, I said, what type of life do you think we last lived together? And he goes, "You know, man, this is weird. It's just, I have this feeling that we're Roman soldiers and we made a promise to each other. If we died in that life, shall we find each other in the next?" I shit you not, this is a real story. And I've had multiple experiences like that. So it tells me that life is cyclic. And, you know, we might go to this dark sleep and then the vibration, kind of the Jupiter ascending theory, right? Is that reincarnation is a reignition of the vibrational sequence of your essence that comes through the DNA, right? Could be something like that. But
see, yeah, I'm very skeptical of the immortality of the human soul. Mm-hmm. By the way, once we exist, we're all immortal anyway, so who cares about chasing immortality? But the past life experience, just by the fact that the human population is exponential, we can't all have had past human lives. It wouldn't, from generation to there'd be some people would be shorted out. Maybe that's how it works. I don't pretend to know, but I do respect that in that exercise, there's great value in self-knowledge that can come from that if you don't get carried away with the mythology of your past life, that it can tell you about yourself, that it can be channeling something, that there is a great generational presence and consciousness that comes from that exercise that I think is very important to see how much humanity has progressed and to appreciate our past. Absolutely.
100%. And here's the thing, and this is the biggest point of it all pertaining to that conversation. Nobody knows. And that's the wondrous thing about it, is you don't know. And that's the thing that allows you to plan your life on, to guide your life on. Just that unknowingness. Don't even think about it. Don't worry about it. Death is inevitable, so don't even think about it. You know what? If there is nothing after death, if it is a cold, dark, nothingness sleep, then it doesn't matter because you're not going to remember it. But if there is something afterwards, well, make sure that you paved your way through this one. Make sure that you did good here. Make sure that you were reverberating the universal energy of love. You were giving back. You were helping. You were being, yeah, right? I mean, seriously, that's what it's about. It's an interesting world, man. So tell me about how you got into psychedelics.
Oh yeah, this is an interview, right? You're supposed to ask him questions.
I know, right? Well, it's a conversation, really. But talk to me about psychedelics and how psychedelics really have changed your life.
Yeah. Well, maybe I should talk about drugs as a whole first.
Yeah.
Because the fundamental, I mean, technically, cannabis is a psychedelic, of course, right? But only in a technical sense. Experientially, it's much milder and doesn't really put itself in a different category of drugs. But when I got out of the Marine Corps and I was doing Iraq Veterans Against the War activism, living in our group home in Washington, D.C., I went to the VA hospital in D.C., the flagship of VA healthcare, and I was having trouble sleeping. When I got back from Iraq in 2004, I was in Fallujah with the Marines. Yeah. Got a taste of combat, nothing particularly brutal, but I saw dead. I never pulled my trigger in action, but I was around a lot of people who did. I saw dead bodies. People around me died in action. So it was a good mouthful of combat.
Yeah,
a good knee deep in the shit and dancing in it. And 7 months in Fallujah in 2004, I was there for the first battle in April, not the big second battle. So my combat experience was legit, but on the low end, we'll say.
Yeah.
But I when I got back, they told me it was combat stress. Don't worry about. And it should have at least gotten a little more deliberate attention. Then I volunteered to go back to Iraq in 2006, but got kicked out for having brought a pistol back the first time and ended up spending a year as a sergeant who spoke Arabic with combat experience, managing a barracks at Camp Pendleton and mowing lawns. So I was pissed. Like when I got the day before I got awarded a Navy Commendation Medal for my tour in Iraq, I got demoted from sergeant to corporal. Yeah. And then I got out like a month later. But I had PTSD symptoms. I'd like to say now that, I mean, for legal reasons, I'm limited how I can talk about this, right? Yeah. But I'd like to think that through self-care, through conscientious cannabis and psychedelic therapy, I've got my PTSD functionally under control. And cannabis is a big part of that, obviously. But back to the VA in DC, I went in there saying, I'm having trouble sleeping.
Yeah.
I just want something to help me sleep. Can you give me something to help me sleep? That was the one thing they couldn't give me. I walked out of there with a little brown paper bag, 5 prescriptions. 3 of them had suicide listed as a side effect. Jeez. What's the agenda there?
Yeah.
And I was really fortunate. There was one of them I took, I think Xanax, because it was like for anxiety as needed. And I took it and I was like, this is like smoking pot, but with a headache. Fuck this, and I was really lucky to be with Iraq Veterans Against the War at the time and have at least some regular, I mean, Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm half Jewish and half German, so I'm genetically engineered to hate myself. But, you know, for all intents and purposes, I'm a regular white dude. I can get pot in D.C., you know, in 2006, 2007, right? But I've seen a lot of, and this is my, you know, my nonprofit that I run right now is called Homefront Battle Buddies. I should be promoting it more up front, right?
You should, yeah.
Homefrontbattlebuddies.org. I don't know how we can get into that however much we want. But I'll finish answering your question because I don't think it's unfair, given the statistics about veteran suicide, to say that cannabis saved my life, because it kept me, I mean, I don't want to say it saved my life, but it was part of saving my life from, you know, government, an agency that would rather I die, you know, delay, deny, wait for them to die. And, you know, I just sort of deftly sidestepped that.
Yeah.
And it's really thanks to cannabis as, I mean, I like to sip it all day. You know, I'm a relative lightweight, but that's the most important adjustment for me. So to other psychedelics, and I don't know if you want to, I mean, I've had positive experiences with a whole range of different things. And I'll skip over most of it, but I did go through a period where I was buying DMT on the Silk Road and had an excessive supply, and currently have done somewhere between 150 and 200 launches with DMT. So check, pretty familiar there. I'm very proud of my video library on YouTube, where several million of my 100 or so million views on my channel were me recording my first like half a dozen times doing DMT and talking through it. And instructional videos on how to use the Silk Road, which were taken down. So, and of course now irrelevant. I'd like to say that I was a big part of, like, I was one of Ross Ulbricht's like silent sidekicks, you know, just, you know, we're looking in the same direction. Right. We're helping make it happen. I've introduced a lot of people to DMT. I'm starting to, so when I got a sidebar on the legal stuff, I got arrested in Texas the day I announced my presidential campaign with my bus with cannabis, concentrates, cocaine, mushrooms, and I think LSD. Anyway, I was facing 4 felonies and a misdemeanor, and I basically beat it with the religious defense. The First Amendment right to religion. And what I did is I filed a motion to dismiss. And if anybody wants the text of that, you can email me. I did a great talk at the First Church of Cannabis, Bill Levin's operation. You can look that up, and it's just, I tell the whole story, and the document is like usually attached below. If not, you can email me. Email adam@thefreedomline.com. And in that case, basically after I filed the motion, I was really kind of negotiating. They respected me as an attorney, and I don't want to give the whole backstory. I had a lot of fun telling off the judge in Wise County, Texas. You know, as you can imagine, you know, representing myself the whole way. And I filed that motion, and then they offered me a sweetheart plea deal, basically. Whereas like for 4 felonies and a misdemeanor, I paid like a $240 fine and was on probation for a year, but I just ignored it after that. So I say that's a pretty, if I was a lawyer,
yeah,
and I said, hey, I got my client down to that, you'd be like, holy shit, you're a good lawyer. But in Saguache County, Colorado, in December of last year, even more importantly, I beat a felony 2 psilocybin distribution charge by spending 12 days in solitary and basically staring down the government and not cooperating. It was fucking awesome. I made him feed me vegan. I worked out naked because I was alone. I got books after a few days. I mean, there were some challenges to it. I don't want to say it's easy, but here's the bottom line. Is why I'm comfortable saying I grow and give away mushrooms here. Yes, psilocybin, is that when government comes at you with a criminal charge, they're basically saying, plead guilty to this and accept this punishment, or else we will assemble a jury of your peers and get their permission to fuck you even harder.
Nice.
No justice.
Yep.
No, how do we make a victim whole? No, how do we look out for the public safety? None of that. It's how do we fuck you as hard as we can, because that's what we profit from.
Yep.
And when it comes to mushrooms, at least for a veteran bringing anti-suicide medication, other veterans, and I admitted this. I said, yes, those are my mushrooms, and I am intending to distribute them. Although, would it have held up in trial? Single envelope capsules? I don't know. I think I could have gotten it beat down to at least a misdemeanor possession if I really wanted to play that game. But I didn't even have to. And I was facing 8 to 24 years. And as a convicted felon, I would have been on the 20-plus year side of that. But to me, it was like walking past the edge of a cliff. If you don't want to fall, don't look down. And I just didn't cooperate the whole time. I made him carry me into the cell. I refused to put on oranges. I didn't fingerprint. I didn't photograph. I said, fuck you to every single one of their requests. Not literally, I was polite. But it was like, no, you're going to take care of me. I know my rights. You're going to feed me vegan. You're going to give me medical attention. I'm going to get access to phone calls on a private line, not a monitored line, because I have a right to make phone calls. I am declaring that I am pro se. You'll respect me as an attorney with all the attendant privilege and right associated with that. And they basically gave up after 12 days. I filed a similar motion that I wrote off the top of my head with a borrowed pen on ruler paper in jail. There was a motion to dismiss. And instead of responding to my motion, they let the prosecution file a motion to dismiss. And the charges were dismissed. And not only was I released, and by the way, it was a pretty fucked up arrest. I don't know if you want to get into that whole backstory if it's as interesting, but my dogs did a weekend outside and got frostbite on their two little puppies. It was fucked up. But after 12 days, they gave up. And normally, if you've ever been in the situation, you would know, it was to start with a traffic stop. When your vehicle gets impounded, you pay for the towing and you pay for the storage. And if you don't put up at least a few $100, you're not getting your vehicle back. This was 12 days and a long tow. And guess what? They drove me to my truck and promised me, no, you're not going to have to pay for it. And I didn't. They all but apologized. So I'm getting ready to sue them now. We're going to have a lot of fun with that. Because since then, as much as you can anthropomorphize a county government, Saguache County, Colorado is fucking afraid of me. They don't take my calls. When I say my name, when I call them, like you can tell, at the court, at the district attorney, at the county sheriff, and at Center Police Department where it happened. And I've been trying to get my shit back. They stole one of my vitamin boxes. I'm fucking pissed off about that. Right? Because it had capsules in it that looked like they could have been drugs.
Oh, God.
I take a lot of vitamins. So,
yeah.
But I basically made mushrooms legal for myself. So I want to share that with people.
Well, I think you should share us how to do it ourselves. Agreed.
Well, one is have that motion ready, have that language adapted to fit yourself to raise that objection. I mean, there's a lot more to it than that. I don't know if you want I don't know how much time we have.
We got 30 minutes left, man.
You know, I'm mostly known, I think, as a civil disobedience activist more than anything else. I mean, as an anti-war veteran who's a civil disobedience activist, and I've been arrested literally more times than I can count since I got out of the Marine Corps November 30, 2006. Fuck, that's a long time ago.
Yeah.
I've been a full-time activist since I went on the mock combat patrol through D.C. known as Operation First Casualty with Iraq Veterans Against the War to mark the 4th anniversary of the invasion on March 19, 2007. So in a few days here, March 19, it'll be my 15-year anniversary of full-time activism.
That's awesome, man.
And I've been arrested. I mean, my total jail time is somewhere around 6 months. The biggest chunk being I did a 4-month stretch in D.C. for the shotgun incident. I've done 12 days in Saguache. I did 10 days in Wise County, Texas. Done a handful of weekends and overnights, and it adds up to about 6 months. But there have been a lot of catch and release incidents too. this experience with Saguache County in terms of resistance and victory is kind of the crowning achievement of my civil disobedience career. It really was something special to be able to, for government to come at me with a threat of, you're going to do 8 to 24 years. And we're coming at you full force. We're locking you in solitary, and you're not getting shit for privileges.
Yeah.
And I just stared him down and said no. And all I'm gonna do is embarrass the fuck out of you the best I can until you admit that you are wrong. And they did. It took them 12 days, and they blinked.
Wow.
And I want everybody to be able to do that, you know. But it doesn't matter. Like, it shouldn't be about that. It shouldn't require people. Like, you know, after that happened, my girlfriend, again, G.I. Mary Jane, Joey Lee, she's an incredible activist in her own right as a cannabis activist. She was my connection to the outside. And I didn't have to talk to her much. She knew, just shine the spotlight. You know, and that's what she did. I gave her one message to record from jail. By the way, when they said it's time for court, it was like, no thanks. I basically just didn't recognize their authority at all.
Right.
Like, I didn't play their game at all. I played my game, which is, fuck you, you're wrong, I'm wrongfully imprisoned, you better respect all my rights, and to the extent that you don't, I'm going to record it, I'm going to sue you, and I'm going to embarrass the fuck out of you. And if you keep me here, I'll go to a trial and defend myself. By the way, Joey, without me having to do anything, arranged for a bondsman to come from Denver and drive, I don't know, like 5 hours down there to do this and raise $1,500, and I turned him down. Like, that was, I didn't ask her to do that. I would not have, had we been in, I didn't even have a chance to make, the only call I got to make, I was able to call out to my dad to just post and get word out. It was a number I had memorized. And Joey took it from there. But when everybody in that jail was like, even the jail commander came out and was like, take your bail, fight this on the outside. And I was like, you fuckers don't know what you're fucking with here. You fucked with the wrong Marine. You think I'm just gonna take bail? No. Because if I take bail, you know what I gotta do? I gotta sign a piece of paper that says you're better than me. I gotta sign a piece of paper that says I'm gonna come back here and recognize your authority. You don't have any authority. All you have is fear and force and violence.
Interesting.
And fuck you for that. I'm gonna sit here with a smile on my face, and I'm gonna tell jokes to all the jailers every chance I get. And I'm gonna make fun of them for being fat, and I'm gonna tell them how much better their lives would be if they were free. And I'm gonna show them that I'm happier on the inside than they are on the outside. And if you keep me here long enough, your whole system's gonna fucking crumble.
Love it, man.
So it took them 12 days to figure that out, but they did.
And
I was released, no charges.
So what was the principle upon the release? So they recognized that it was illegal imprisonment. Obviously, the stop had to have been bullshit.
No, they did the best they could do to save face, and they're gonna lose more when I sue them. And I just haven't gotten around to it yet. I gotta do. I'm busy trimming trees, man.
Yeah.
And making love and doing good drugs and enjoying my paradise here. I'm kind of a de-escalationist.
Yeah.
You know, like I as much as I'm a libertarian who believes in self-ownership and the right to self-defense, I mean, the whole point of that is to make human life better for people, you know, more harmonious, more productive. Like, if someone's stealing food from you, fucking let them. Yeah, you could use force, but if someone is hungry enough to steal your food, you should probably give them some clothes too.
Right.
You know, you should probably give them some love. You know, yeah, you have the right. And yeah, of course, if your life is dependent, if you got a kid and they take a meal and your kid's going to starve, fucking defend that meal. It's not a blanket statement. I believe you have the right, for that reason, to defend shit. Absolutely. But I'm not a pacifist, but I'm a de-escalationist. So even suing them is kind of cringy for me.
Well, I'm actually in Colorado. I'm in Denver, so it's interesting. We're a state.
It's actually, yeah, you're actually decrimmed there anyway.
Yeah, it's Denver. It's already decrimmed, but So what did you do? You claimed religious exemption because of it? What was the factor they used
The
to let...
mechanism of the ending of what you asked about, excuse me, I totally forgot
No,
the
it's all
question
good.
on that. What you asked about was like the mechanism of how the case was resolved, right? So I filed the motion to dismiss, and for a bunch of reasons, and I wrote a letter that was basically a fuck you letter to the judge, our first court date. They said it's time. Well, the first time for court, I said no thanks, and I stayed naked under the covers in my bed. The second time, I passed a letter through the bars while staying in bed. Then a few days later, I don't want to get too much into the weeds of the story.
Yeah.
I filed a motion to dismiss with a lot of reasons. And then the day before my next court hearing, they came into my cell and said, "You're going home." I said, like, fuck I am. I'm just starting to get comfortable here. I was doing naked yoga and calisthenics and shit. I even invented a new yoga pose. But it only works if you're naked and being watched by creepers on a security camera. It's called two birds on a flower. And first, you with your fingers, you make two birds. And then you take cloud pose, which is your feet up, back, over your head and your butt in the air. And then you put one bird on each butt cheek, apply pressure, and pull them apart. So two birds on a flower, if possible, pointed towards the security cameras is the most effective way to do that pose.
They must have loved you there.
Oh yeah. So they did. I mean, I was so much fun, but it was also obviously a threat to their whole racket. And I had so many fun conversations with the guards during that time. I really connected with a lot of people. And always I want to shout out the two women who cooked for me there and did their best to provide me with an awesome vegan diet. And it was vegan and it was hearty. I couldn't do one meal a day, which is what I normally do. I fast 23 hours and then do one feast.
Yeah.
But for 3 meals a day in jail food, they did a great job actually. But yeah, they just came. So I filed that motion, and then the day before my next court date, the prosecutor. I mean, they must have met. The county sheriff, prosecutor, the jail commander, the judge in the case, and be like, how do we make this guy go away? they probably said, he's done 12 days, because they don't want to admit that they're wrong. But the whole time I was telling them, every fucking minute you keep me in here, tabs going up on Saguache County, because I'm gonna sue to the standard of whatever days, hours I was in there. But also, you're fucking with my property. If you don't bring my truck and my trump card in this, I was willing to strip naked and wedge myself under the bunk and make them pull me out of there and hurt me to do so. Although, and I've done different versions of this in different circumstances, and lots of fun stories I'm not going to get sidebarred with. I've actually used that tactic successfully of like wedging myself under a bunk. And when I did it in New Orleans, a guard actually tried to pull me out and gave up. So that was cool. But I was ready to strip naked and be like, how about you motherfuckers bring me my truck and put it right out there in the parking lot, or you're going to have to dump me naked on the sidewalk. What's that worth to you? But I didn't have to, because so right after I got that piece of paper, I was like, and the guard that sent it to me, that handed it to me, he was a friend of mine. Like, we were really cool. He handed me this paper and was like, looks like you're going home today. And I'm like, huh. All charges dropped, huh? Case dismissed. Well, that's about the meat of the victory, isn't it?
Yeah.
I guess I won. So what's going to happen with my truck? And my dogs had already been picked up, so that they were okay. But one of the sergeants, who I made fun of for being fat 12 days before, on my way in, I made him carry me in. It was hilarious because there was two fat guys, one on either side of me, and I'm like, 210, 215. I'm not easy to carry, but I just like picked up my legs. I wouldn't even let them drag me. I scrunched up and made them carry me by my armpits. Two guys on either side. I mean, they must have thrown out their backs. It was funny. At least that's what Joey said. But he came to me and said, in the jail cell, said, Kokesh, get your stuff. We're going to go get your truck. And I didn't know how to ask, but I just looked at him and was like, for free? And he said, yeah, man, we're going to pay for your truck. And I said, how can I trust you? And he said, "Have I lied to you yet?" And in that moment, I decided to trust him, and it was the right choice. And he gave me a ride in silence for 20 minutes to meet with an unmarked vehicle from the department that arrested me, and they gave me the rest of my property back that they were holding as evidence. They didn't give me the shrooms back or my fucking vitamin box.
Weird.
And then he drove me to the impound lot and asked them to give me my truck without charging me. And that was it.
Wow.
Total victory.
And it is a victory, man. And, you know, it was James Madison who wrote Federalist 46, the Federalist Papers. And I talk about this all the time, but he talked about the 4 steps to curb a tyrannical and oppressive government whenever it gets to that point.
Federalists, they don't have any credibility with me anyway. I'm an anti-federalist.
Well, so anyways, this is the model for the 10th Amendment, though, right? This is the model for the 10th Amendment. The first 2 parts are for the people. Disquietude, this is what we're doing now. We're standing on our soapbox. We're being loud. We're being proud. We're telling it how we see it and how we believe it is. And the second one is civil disobedience. And see, civil disobedience has always been that point to where a tyrannical and oppressive government loses their power because their power derives from the consent of the governed. And when the governed, which are the power figure, pull that back. That's what civil disobedience is. I'm no longer going to fund you. I'm no longer going to play your game. I ain't fucking playing this shit anymore. And we pull back that consent. That's when the system has to change to the demands of the people instead of the people changing to the demands of the system.
Are you a constitutionalist?
It's really hard to say what you are. I would say more of a libertarian anarchist. More of just leave me the fuck alone. I don't want to be bothered, you know?
Let me give you a very important idea.
Yeah.
It meant a lot to me recently, and why I created the group on Facebook, if anybody wants to find it, called the Oath Breakers. But the Constitution that we live under now is actually the product of the coup of 1789 against the legitimate government under the Articles of Confederation before that, that actually was consensual. And I'm reading this awesome book right now called America's Counter-Revolution, the Constitution Revisited by Sheldon Richman. And I know this is going to sound corny, but just because I've got this on my table right now, I'm just going to read this paragraph. This book challenges the assumption that the Constitution was a landmark in the struggle for liberty. Instead, Sheldon Richman argues it was the product of a counter-revolution, a setback for the radicalism represented by America's break with the British Empire. Drawing on careful, credible historical scholarship and contemporary political analysis, Richman suggests this counter-revolution was the work of conservatives who sought a nation of power, consequence, and grandeur. America's counter-revolution makes a persuasive case that the Constitution was a victory not for liberty, but for the agendas and interests of a militaristic, aristocratic, privilege-seeking ruling class. Now, the Articles of Confederation that we had before that was consensual and required unanimous consent of all 13 colonies or member states at that point to change any part of it. There was a power-hungry group, and as successful as the American Revolution was with a break from Britain, it wasn't a break from the same moneyed aristocracy that with the coup of 1789 was able to create a new strong central government that had the power to tax, legitimize slavery, and standing armies, which much of the founders were against. So this is something that I'm very passionate about because on the path down the rabbit hole, the Constitution is this ledge sticking out that a lot of libertarians get stuck on. And it really is a worshiping of arbitrary authority of words on paper. And a lot of us get past it, I think, as you clearly have, to based on your answer to my question, that you're not a fetishist.
Yeah.
You're not a constitutional fetishist, because a lot of libertarians are stuck in that primitive phase of libertarianism. And just a brief look at the history helps get people past that and get more grounded in the deeper principles of libertarianism. So just the history of it, I mean, it's pretty obvious on its face that the Constitution is not a document based on consent.
Wow.
The Articles of Confederation, at least, were by comparison. And I mean, of course, I'm not discounting the fact that we lived, or that period of human history was one of brutality and slavery and other forms. But at the top.
Yep, lost it for a second there, Adam. All right. I'm loving this conversation. Adam will be back here in a second. He's just reconnecting. But loving this conversation. And I never knew that this book existed and the comparison between these. So this is incredibly interesting for me.
Oh,
there you
there,
go.
All
right.
I'm back.
Cool.
That was another T-Mobile glitch. I remember where I was. So from 1776 to 1789, America was governed by a consensual document, the Articles of Confederation. I'm not denying that it was a brutal period and that slavery was an abomination during that time. But there would have been a better, more peaceful way out of it without a civil war, by economic means, by cooperative means. Obviously, I'm against slavery, but I'm also against war. And America is the only country on earth that needed a civil war in order to end slavery. And obviously that's not what it was about, even for Abraham Lincoln. Man, I'm trying to touch all the shit that's going to get you banned on YouTube.
That's okay.
Abraham Lincoln was a vicious, vile racist and hated black
100%.
Some horrendous quotes.
100%.
But here's the next thing. The Holocaust and World War II.
Mm-hmm.
Victors write the history. Here's the next crazy layer
Churchill.
of history to pull back. I'm not a Holocaust denier. But we would be naive to not be revisionists of a history written by corrupt victors with an interest in militarism and preserving the glory of their standing armies. No. I don't think the Holocaust was actually the deliberate destruction or annihilation of the Jewish people, or even 6 million. But the Holocaust was the death of 1 to 2 million people, not in extermination camps, but in brutal work camps, through all sorts of horrific violence. And it wasn't just about the Jews. It was Jews, gypsies, and a whole host of other undesirables. And if you look back at that, and I don't want to, we go down that rabbit hole as deep as you want, but what's the result in the United States and first world countries? It is the institutionalization of the military-industrial complex and standing armies.
The Fourth Reich.
Sacred and necessary. Yes.
The Fourth Reich. And going to the concentration camps, I was in the Navy for 10 years. And I worked in weapon control. So
I hear that.
No, it you know what? It wasn't bad. It was actually a good time. It was actually a good time. Your ass rode Navy equipment. It was all good. So, but I worked on weapon control systems. You got that. Gun missile fire control systems, and talking to some old admirals one day, and there was this story about World War II, and he says, did you know that we were actually, the United States, the Allied forces were actually one of the main causes for a lot of the deaths during World War II that were attributed to the Holocaust? And I said, how? And he goes, well, these concentration camps were really work camps, but they were on the outskirts, in the middle of nowhere. And the only way in was through railroad tracks. And the Germans had to resupply them with trains that would come on a daily or weekly basis. And he goes, we saw that, and the thing is these work camps were also German replenishment facilities. This is where their troops would go. This is where they would store ammunition. So we just bombed the shit out of the railroad tracks and let them starve.
All right. I'm taking charge of this interview now. Enough talk about dark shit, because I still haven't finished answering your question about drugs.
Go.
And that's way more fun. We don't have that much time left. Yeah, so I was talking about I talked about my experience with cannabis generally, and I've grown, and I've been arrested. I did a week, in jail in Philly, actually, for smoking pot in front of Independence Hall. I talked about my DMT experience, and then we started getting into mushrooms based on the arrest. And I'm on mushrooms now, by the way, moderate dose. But I'm comfortable saying now, because of what happened in Saguache County, that I grow and give away mushrooms here. Me personally. I also host a nonprofit, again, homefrontbattlebuddies.org, and we're building the facility so that we can host full retreats for veterans to make psychedelic therapies and other alternative healing, whatever it is that people want, available in what we can bring together here. But I'm particularly excited for veterans about cannabis, psilocybin, MDMA, and ketamine. And we want to provide a safe, off-the-record, private space where veterans can experience all of that. In my case, I've done a little bit of ketamine, but never seriously explored it. MDMA, I've had a handful of experiences with romantic partners that were incredible, but never thoughtful or meditative. And my understanding is that in 2 guided sessions with a therapist, because if you direct that energy that, I mean, MDMA started as a couples therapy drug,
Mm-hmm.
but as an individual therapy drug for PTSD in a guided segment, it opens you up to the self-love and addressing things that you wouldn't be able to otherwise. So I think it's a good assistant that way. By the way, ketamine is thought of more for depression. And then cannabis, obviously very well known at this point. And I don't think cannabis actually is a cure for much of the psychological ailments or PTSD things that it's very applicable for. It's symptom control.
Mm.
It's great for reducing anxiety, moderating hunger, sleep, mood, things like that. But it's not going to make up for your dad not being present in your life.
Right.
You know, like it's not going to help you talk through seeing your buddies blown up.
Yeah.
That takes deliberate effort, and cannabis can be an aid to that. But for me, with I don't talk about LSD because I think LSD is wonderful, and I think it can be. And I've also done a few weeks of ayahuasca, 2 weeks, really, 2 weeks worth altogether. And I think those experiences are great, but I don't think they have the greatest therapeutic potential because of the physiological and logistical overhead.
Yep.
Whereas I think psilocybin is a much better gateway to that therapy and that self-awareness and that state of openness. So I'm very excited about that, and I'm looking to explore it myself. Today I did about an eighth of mushrooms in 2 doses as I was doing chainsaw stuff. I'm just kind of coming down from it. At this point, it's almost out of my system. I should take some more before it gets too late. Just kidding. I'm gonna go to bed early after this. I'm gonna eat my 1 meal. Yeah, I've had no calories today, and
Wow.
I feel great. By the way, I love that. It's been great for me. But psilocybin. What I'm really looking forward to is having a regular enough supply of my own grown here to experiment with it and to go deep with it.
Yeah.
And what I was talking to my partner Joey about, my girlfriend here, last time we were tripping was after watching a documentary about Dennis Leary and Ram Dass.
I know the documentary. Yeah.
As psychonauts. You know, and I've done LSD. And by the way, last time I got LSD, I bought 50 tabs for $100. It's fucking awesome.
Hell yeah.
And just to be flippant, I carried it around in my fanny pack for like months until it went bad, basically. No, but I don't worry, I used all. But by the end, it was kind of weak. But no, I carried it on me. Like, this is why I got arrested for mushrooms. Is like I live my life as a continuous Fourth Amendment audit for any law enforcement dumb enough to cross my path. Where was I going with that? Oh, for mushrooms. I've done mushrooms in a variety of formats. I don't know, somewhere around 50 to 100 times.
Yeah.
I've done LSD altogether, 50-ish times. But I still feel like everything I've done compared to at least to Dennis Leary and his crew and Ram Dass and their exploration of psychedelics is really just dipping our toe in the water.
Yeah.
I consider my work as a psychonaut and what I want to bring back. Last time, we had about a dozen people over here for a weekend, and I took a really strong single tab of LSD around 11. We went for a walk, and then I took 2/8 of mushrooms 4 hours later and 8 hours later. And during that time, cooked an epic meal and made sure all of my guests stayed hydrated. And it was such a good vegan meal. They're going, man, Adam, you're going to convince me to be vegan now with this food. And then I smoked DMT on the couch, and it was like my time to check out for a little bit. And, I opened my eyes and I said, Someone said, "How was it? What did you see?" I said, "I talked to God. It said, stop asking so many fucking questions." And so I feel that, again, compared to Ram Dass and Dennis Leary, and to the truly thoughtful psychonauts of their era, that we really haven't had any great figures of since. The work of our generation, and certainly what I have done, is just barely dipping our toes in the water.
Right.
And I want to create the space here for myself and then share with others to just dive on in. And my cat just knocked something over. Yeah. Excuse me.
No, yeah. And that's novel, man. I mean, you're right. We're having a rebirth, a re-revolution of this expansion of consciousness culture that happened around the 60s, whether it was government derived or whatever. Now it's naturally derived. We're seeing the therapeutic aspects of these natural, wholesome medicines. And I've done many, many different experiences. I haven't done psychedelics in a very, very long time. Do you know Ben Stewart? He did Esoteric Agenda, Kymatica documentaries.
Yeah, I don't know him personally, but I know his name.
I'm going to make an introduction. So he does a lot on psychedelics. He did the Psychedelics show on Gaia. He just did Marcus Aubrey's documentary on darkness, going into darkness for 3 days, nothing but darkness, and the hallucinogenic experiences that you go into for just being locked into darkness. So it'd be someone for you to probably talk to in the sense of getting on his show as well, because he's phenomenal. He's actually going to be on my show on the 15th.
Yeah, and you have my cell number.
Yep. Please
share it without asking with anybody you think is worthy.
Yeah, no, and I think I might need some mushrooms, but I'm not going to say that too loud. My wife might hear me, so. But it's...
If that's your attitude towards mushrooms...
No, it's a joke.
Wife up first.
Well, it's a joke, but here's the thing, is the one thing about mushrooms is, what is your thought on it? Do you think that it's alive and that it's showing you a trip? Do you think in the spiritual aspect of it, like a lot of shamans and the natives believed, is that there's a spirit that originates through the actual fungus, and this is what's guiding you through your journey? What are your thoughts on that?
No, I don't think that. I think the fungus may be nature's gift to humanity and something we evolved with to have access to psilocybin, but it's that vehicle to get to induce a psychological state. And I mean, how much do you want to personify or anthropomorphize that? I don't really want to.
Yeah.
I mean, as much as I've learned, and I want to go back for a second.
Yeah.
Because my family was non-practicing Jewish and non-practicing Presbyterian. You know, like we had Christmas and we lit a menorah and made potato latkes, but we only went to church a few times a year, and it really wasn't part of our lives. Our parents never talked about it. So secular. You know, modern American, typical secular household in that sense. And for a long time, I was agnostic because the idea appealed to me intellectually, and I could defend it simplistically. And then Stefan Molyneux's book, Against the Gods, I think is the title. I listened to the audiobook. Made me confident as an atheist. And while I realized that the logic of that applied to all the concept of personified gods and dismissed most mysticism, it ignored the fact that there is still something that we as humans are aware of that is beyond our conscious understanding. There is vibration in the universe, and to me, the way I described it earlier is pantheism. Everything is God.
Yeah.
as in that vibration of love that unites us, that makes us all one. That is God. And what I learned how to do in jail and was the next evolution of my own spirituality, was to learn how to communicate with that and tune into it. And that's just something that I get to do. That's part of my personal meditation and prayer practice. Every day I meditate at least once, usually twice a day. I set a timer on my phone just to keep track of how long I'm going. But I usually just sit and find stillness. That's my mantra. Find stillness.
Yeah.
And then in some of that time, I close my eye, and I'm seated, relaxed, my eyes closed, mostly quiet, but I'm not anal about it being silent. And at some point during the meditation, I just tune into that love vibration, you know, and when my eyes are closed, it's yellow and orange and red and purple and just a beautiful glow. And seeing it that way and feeling it in a space of conscious stillness feels, to me at least, like tuning into that. And I want to do that every day. And I want to live in that as much as I can. And I think now I've totally forgotten your...
No, you answered it. You just answered it.
Okay.
You absolutely 100% just answered it. Adam, dude, this was an awesome conversation. That was a fast hour and a half, man. I appreciate your time tonight. I want to have you back on. I think there's so much more that we can talk about on these perspectives, especially the constitutionality, about the Constitution, how it actually, I think, makes us slaves by law, and a lot of other things. So definitely going to invite you back. We got your websites out there. We got your Odyssey page. We got your Patreon all linked up. We got Homefront BattleBuddies.com. That is the nonprofit that you operate. And you're going to have to send me the link for the Facebook group. I'll get that out in a news blast to everybody out there. And what's your primary website people can find you at?
I use Telegram as
Perfect.
my main content distribution channel. I highly recommend it as an app that people use it for personal communications of all kinds. It would replace phone and text. It does that over data, but it also allows users to create channels with various settings that are beyond censorship, because I create a channel, send you the link, they host it. There's no anything else. There's no censorship.
Yep.
So t.me/Adam versus the Man. That's my main Telegram channel. From that, I'm pretty sure it's in the description there.
It
you
is.
Can find our Gardenia channel, t.me/The Garden of Freedom, and Homefront Battle Buddies. You can search for those on Telegram and find those. I'm on Twitter. If you enjoy Twitter, I do enjoy it as a public conversation. I am at Adam Kokesh, ADAMKOKESH. And if you go to AdamVersusTheMan.com, it'll redirect you now, because we're being lazy about it, to Odyssey. And I'm very excited to be using Odyssey, ODYSEE.com, as our primary video destination, because it's blockchain based. It's on the library blockchain, and also censorship proof. So with that, thank you very much for the opportunity, Josh. It's been a lot of fun. Mwah.
Much love,
my
man.
personal email, Adam@thefreedomline.com. And as I end every episode of Adam versus the Man, mwah, peace and love, y'all. Choose happiness and be excellent to each other.
Awesome. Adam, hold on just 1 second. Hey, guys, much appreciated for your time tonight. We're going to be going to Fringe After Dark here in about 30 minutes at 9:30 Mountain Time at 11:30 Eastern Time. That's a subscription show you can get for just $5.99 a month, the same as a cup of coffee. You can find that on socialredpill.com. We'll see most of you guys there afterwards. Everybody else, you guys have a great night. Don't forget to tune in tomorrow. That makes you think at 6:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Much love, respect. God bless, and we'll take care, guys.